Hi, this is Greg Smalley on Pod 366, a Weird Movies podcast. And today I'm joined below me by Terry McSorley, Gore Girl, who writes for our site sometimes. Hi, Terry.
Hello.
And I believe I'm mirrored, so this should be pointing towards our special guest, Eric Kirsten of
Hello.
Academic Film Journal. And we just had there she is, she's back. So a lot of exciting camera movement on a film-based podcast. We got some zooms going. Okay, let's get right into the discussion of this week's movies, because by the end, we want to spend some time talking about Jean Rollin, especially, because there are a couple of movies coming out, and I know both of you wanted to be on this particular episode to talk about him. So we're going to try to get through these other ones real quick, and then we can spend some time talking about him, fortunately. We wanted to bring to mind, this is a movie that's now out in theaters, although I've only seen it listed in one theater in California. So you're more likely to see it on VOD, which is also out on VOD when you'll be listening to this, most likely. It was originally called Freaks Out when it played festivals. It's now called Freaks versus the Reich. It's about four circus performers who have mystical powers. So it's like magical realism, and they fight Nazis. And I think I had to have cribbed this from somewhere, but I can't recall where, so I can't give credit, but it should be probably titled X-Men meets Inglourious Basterds, basically. We have a trailer. It'll be up on the site. If you're watching on the site, you can probably look at it. So it looks interesting, action-packed. Guys, did you have any thoughts about this?
Yeah, the trailer made it seem like sort of Alejandro Jodorowsky meets Alex de Iglesia kind of wackiness, kind of like Iron Sky a little bit. Have you seen that movie? Very, very European, hip. So familiar, but I'm eager to see it.
I have not seen Iron Sky, but I know what it is. So.
Actually,
I did. I saw one of the sequels, actually.
The sequel's not very good. You should see the original.
Terry, any thoughts?
Yeah, it definitely gave me Jodorowsky vibes as well. It looks like a fairly big budget. I'll probably be taking a pass, but
very comic book, very Marvel-ish in a way.
Yeah,
Marvel.
I think so.
Yeah, the X-Men versus Inglourious Basterds reference works.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We will see. I'll probably end up catching it, but maybe not. So that was it for things that are out in theaters or VOD. Everything else is re-releases on physical media. And we're going to start with this one, which is a memorable image. If you're just listening, you can't see Carolina Bang there with her lips basically stapled together with big metal rivets. It's from Acción Mutante by Alex de Iglesias, which was his first movie. It's basically a movie about a group of disfigured terrorists who take their revenge on the non-disfigured by kidnapping this heiress, and they do terrorist type activities. It was his first movie. I saw it when it first came out in 1993 on VHS and haven't seen it since, but it definitely left an impression on me. It's quite violent, set his his whole aesthetic. You guys have any thoughts on that?
I actually haven't seen it yet. I've seen all his other stuff though, and love him to death. I think he's not as well known in this country because the titles of all of his movies in American are bad. They just don't make any sense. They're just banal. Like you never would guess from like 39 Coins, for example, or Dance with the Devil, or what's the other one?
Day of the Beast is kind of
Witching and Bitching. They have the Beast.
Bitching, yeah.
It's like Bitch's Sabbath was right there. You know what I mean? Like anything other than Witching and Bitching, which doesn't even make any sense.
That was kind of
It's
silly.
such a great movie, though.
Terry, have you seen it?
I have not seen it. I also love Alex de la Iglesias. A handful of movies I've seen have been fantastic. This trailer threw me into fits. Definitely seeing this. I might just go blind by it. Really,
Right, me
it
too.
looks fantastic. Lots of gore. Looks wacky, over the top, insanity. Looks funny. Looks great. My kind of movie. All the way.
I think this hadn't been released in the United States. It
Yeah.
definitely hadn't been on Blu-ray. It might have been on DVD. That might be why everybody missed it. I guess I was kind of lucky to catch it.
It was, yeah, it wasn't on DVD or anything. I was looking because, I would have bought it years ago, but it's like, it was just not there. I thought it would be like really rough and sort of John Waters DIY looking because it's like his first film, but it looks really good.
No, it was very polished. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's on DVD from, I forgot who, or it's on Blu-ray.
Blu-ray.
I forgot who's releasing it. I could look that up, but I'd rather just go on to this next one because this one's a fairly big release.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the only downside to this one is right now it can only be special ordered from Vinegar Syndrome's website. It's a limited edition. I think it'll be at normal other retailers later. It's the Hourglass Sanatorium, which also had not been on DVD or Blu-ray in North America until now. That's a big oversight because this is a major work of Eastern European surrealism. It's very surreal movie.
Absolutely.
And it seems like it belongs in the Criterion Collection, but instead it's being released by Yellow Veil, which is a new releaser who has done some very good stuff. It's about a guy whose father is in a sanatorium. He visits it, and once there, time kind of flows in any direction, and everything is possible. And he walks from room to room, and every room's a new set piece. At one point, he goes out on a little safari, and
there's
elephants
elephants.
pass by.
It gets very, very sort of Fellini, later Fellini, but with an Eastern European drabness kind of thrown in there, which I think is fascinating. I was watching it up until a point where he got kind of whimsical, like the lead guy. First, he's kind of in disbelief as he's sort of going back in time, but then he starts getting all magical thinking, and I'm just like, oh my God, whimsy. So I stopped watching it, but the first hour was great. I still need to finish it, but I figure if any movie is meant to be watched over a period of months, it's this movie.
I think it's one of those movies. Everything changes from scene to scene, so you consider it each scene kind of separately. I think. Terry, have you seen it?
I have actually. I randomly watched it a couple months ago on YouTube. Someone was talking about it on Twitter, someone I follow, and they had some screenshots. It looked cool, and yeah, it's very very trippy, very trippy stuff. And it kind of reminded me of something I can't put my finger on. Something I seen a Czech film. I can't think of what it is, but it seemed really similar. It seemed almost familiar, but maybe I seen it years ago. I'm not sure, or I don't know.
It definitely has a sort of Czech New Wave vibe.
Yeah.
I also love his other big film, Sargassa Manuscripts, which I've written about at length.
Sargassa Manuscript is probably much more accessible to the random viewer who isn't
True.
ready for full bore surrealism, because this really is surrealism. It's not. They're not playing around.
Definitely not. The Sargassa, it's like you can get really into it, but then 2 hours into it, you realize there's still another hour to go. And there's no story. Like the story just keeps changing until you're completely lost. So you're like, to see it all in one sitting is not easy, but it's great.
So I think this one's a good one, very good one for people to buy. Fans of the movie will definitely want to track this down.
Definitely.
Previously, it was only available in a Region 2, Region B thing, which I own, but this one looks much better and has a lot of supplemental material too, treated with great respect. But let's move on. Now, this one is a
Uh-huh.
new re-release of The Man Who Fell to Earth. It's not all that important, as a physical media release, because The Man Who Fell to Earth has been on physical media forever.
Exactly.
It's constantly being re-released. The only thing about this is it's sort of a collectible package with it's a steel book, and there's a neat little slipcover thing where you can change the color of David Bowie's
Oh, yeah.
which you can see illustrated in the still. They show how the slipcover will go over and changes
Love
out from blue to sort of a yellowish thing. But yeah, it's not a significant release. I thought I'd bring it to people's attention, and I believe everybody probably is. I'm going to guess everybody's a fan of this movie. I certainly am.
I'm a fan to a point. But
To a
again,
point.
it sort of gets very sort of self-indulgent, I think, especially with its ideas of time moving through everything. It's like at first you're like, wow, this is great. But that's kind of the movie. It's like he's trying to do something, he gets sidetracked, he winds up drunk, and there's all sorts of subplots of business people and everything. It just kind of convolutes after like 2.5 hours or something. I mean, that's a long movie, as I remember.
Yeah, and it's a movie about losing your focus.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Losing
hard to keep your
focus on
focus.
Terry.
Yo, yeah, I love this movie. I actually have the Taschen book. Whenever I go to Miami, I love to stop at Taschen. That is just the baddest baddest bookstore ever. I'd love to own every book that they have, but I have the special book they did for that. It's just gorgeous. Like, it has every picture, every still from the film, and that's got all these interjected sort of behind the scenes things and quotes, and it's just fantastic. And yep, I love this movie. I already have it on Blu-ray. I'm not one to buy something just for the collector aspect of it, so I wouldn't be purchasing this, but it is very, very pretty.
Yeah, I think it'd have to be your first purchase.
Yeah.
There may be obsessive collectors out there who want every single edition, but it's the same as other editions with a new case, basically. So this next one is also a new. This is the first time Sion Sono's Suicide Club has been on Blu-ray, which was kind of surprising that it hadn't been out. Because it's a fairly popular movie, and it was kind of his breakthrough movie, at least overseas. And the Blu-ray here is from Discotek, and it's bare bones. There's nothing, no special features or anything, but it had not been on Blu-ray before, so in the US. So
yeah, that's weird. I would have
strange. Yes, he has a big following. So
yeah.
I have actually not seen Suicide Club, so this is the first one I haven't seen. What about you guys?
I would have done a spit take to know that you haven't seen that. Like it's like a staple, especially like after like Kill Bill, there was that little blip of like Yukari, I can't remember her name, but she's like the go-go something or other. She's in this, like, she was like a huge moment, and I don't know. It's a great movie. I've had the DVD for a long time. It's like Hunger Games and all that other stuff kind of stems from this. You like watch Hunger Games, you're like, this has already been done and better.
Gary.
Yeah, I like this one. It's not a favorite. I think there's a lot of other Japanese films of this ilk that I like much, much better. But it has that great, beautiful scene where they're all holding hands and jump in the track, which I think is it's just such an iconic scene. It's fantastic. But
right, sorry, I'm
film,
getting this one mixed up with the one where they're all on the island killing each other.
Yeah.
Well, that's Battle
I
Royale.
was gonna say, you sounded like you were describing Battle Royale.
Yeah, I wondered too, but
I saw the look of all these school people. I was like, oh yeah, that movie.
Yeah, no, Battle Royale is fantastic.
Battle
That I
Royale.
have a few different. Yeah, that's a fantastic movie.
Yeah, Suicide Club is great too, though. That's the one where there's suddenly there's a musical interlude, and some, I forget his name. He's like playing guitar and like singing about the events. And you're just like, what the hell is going on? I love this movie.
Okay, well, that, like I say, it's on Blu-ray, no special features, but hadn't been on Blu-ray before. So if you're a fan of the movie, you'll want to check that out. And
Definitely.
we did get through those releases pretty quickly, so we can devote our remaining time to the two Jean Rollin movies that are coming out on Blu-ray and 4K UHD this week, and to Jean in general. And we'll start with the earlier one,
Oh,
The
yeah.
Shiver of the Vampires. I do want to point out that both these movies are available either in Blu-ray or 4K Ultra HD disc. And I always point out every time a 4K Ultra HD comes out, I always point out I don't have anything that can play it, and I don't know anybody that does, or know very few people that does.
Me
Do
neither.
either of you have a 4K UHD player?
Not yet.
Nope, I do not.
Yeah, but they keep putting them out, so
Yeah,
but they must be
eventually.
cheap to print.
Exactly.
Well, most people will be buying it on Blu-ray, I would guess, and there are a lot of special features with this. I could go through them, but just it looks like a Criterion quality set of features. Large booklet comes with it. The artwork is well, it's the original poster, but
Yeah.
it looks really good.
Is it all region, or is it, because it looks like it's British?
Yeah, it is from a British company, but it is either all region or this is specific to the US.
Ah,
I'm not sure,
excellent.
but it's definitely sold to the US video market. So I like both I like all Jean Rollin movies, but I don't think as much as you guys do. So I'm going to let you guys discuss this particular movie, and I'll jump in if there's anything I want to add. But Terry, I know you just rewatched this, didn't you? So do you want to take us through maybe just the basics of it, the plot or so forth?
Yeah, so it's a woman newly married, and her unfortunate husband decide to stop by some cousins, estranged cousins. She hasn't seen these cousins since they were children, and she remembers even then that they were very quirky and bizarre. And they get to the castle only to be told that they have passed on. And the plot stems from this, as the name of the film would indicate, The Shiver of the Vampires. They are vampires, and they have a wacky castle. They have servants that spend a lot of time naked. They have all the great things, all the beautiful aesthetics that you'd ever want in a Jean Rollin movie. Plus, it's got humor. It's got Sandra Julian, who is just gorgeous, and it's just an amazement to me. This is one of the first Jean Rollin films I ever seen, and wow, what a starter film! And I was hooked. Like, I had to see every film he ever made. I've seen almost every film he's ever made, including most of his adult films.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, he just rocks my world. His visuals are astounding, and the soundtrack for this film is off the charts. I love it. I actually have a few Acanthus I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I have a few tracks on my YouTube channel with pictures from the film, and it's one of my favorites. It's just beauty.
There is a featurette on the DVD. One of the featurettes is about Acanthus, and sort of a band who I guess didn't do anything else other than the soundtrack. So they're kind of doing some journalism and some detective work on who these guys actually were.
Right. It's a little like Goblin with Suspiria or something like that. It's just like this unique, out of the blue soundtrack. You're just like, how can this even work? But it works. You know what I mean?
It works great. It's so moody. It's perfect.
Like well, I haven't seen it in a while, but isn't it like a kind of jazz fusion?
No, it's rock.
Yeah, it's like slow.
Yeah, it's prog rock, I would call it if I had to put a title on it.
You know, it's got like a through bass line, and there's a crazy sort of guitar that just kind of repeats, but it's slow, almost like blues, but not bluesy. It's like too slow to be prog or anything, but its approach is like slow prog or something. I don't know. It's perfect though. Sort of like, Ennio Morricone, when he does the thing, like he can make a great soundtrack out of like a harmonica and a kettle drum or something like that. Bang, it's like, how does that work? Bang, bang, and whispers. And it's like, it just works. Same thing with like Goblin with the rattling the sheet metal and just going, which it just works. And here it's the same thing.
The image I remember most from this one is the vampire emerging from the grandfather clock, which doesn't sound that spooky, but it's really spooky when you see it. And the other thing I remember really well are the two bourgeois vampires, which I guess are the comic relief that
They're the brothers. When I noticed lately in my reviewing, I watched it again last night, and I watched Two Orphan Vampires again. It's just Roland's habit of like having three people talking, like the two main vampires, and they play off of each other's dialogue. Like, we are vampires, we live in the night. And the brother goes, yes, and da 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 da. And it's just this back and forth. Very good comic timing, almost like the Marx Brothers or something like that, in the way that like Roland writes this like kind of poetry. And it just makes you kind of long to belong to these weirdos. Like, first time I saw it, I didn't really like the two brothers, but this time I was like, oh my God, that reminds me of me, like these decadent swine, you know what I mean? Just like preying on the world.
Okay, and it's got anybody who's familiar with Roland knows it's going to have great cinematography, and it's going to be slow paced, and there's going to be a lot of nudity, and his own peculiar take on vampires.
Exactly, it's a feeling more than a narrative.
Yeah.
There's barely any speaking. There's barely any dialogue till about 20 minutes into the film, and I don't think I honestly ever even noticed it until I've literally seen that movie 15 or more times, and the other night I watched it and realized, there's like about 3 words of dialogue for the first 20 minutes. It doesn't need it. Speaks for its visuals speak for it for sure.
It's the perfect movie, along with some of the other films in this oeuvre, to watch while you're falling asleep or have a really bad flu. You know what I mean? Because it'll catch you like right in that in-between space because it's very slow. So it's like if you're watching it expecting like a thrill ride, like a Marvel movie, you're going to hate it. But if you're really tired, it'll find you and you'll dream your way into it. And it sort of takes control of your subconscious, because that's what it is. I mean, it's straight from his subconscious dream world, his obsessions, his anima. It's very Jungian.
I think yes, if y'all, that's my southern in me coming out, don't have any more comments, we'll move on to the next one, which we can sort of compare, because Shiver of the Vampires was his third movie, and kind of where he'd got his vampire formula kind of perfected to where he wanted it, and he made several movies after that were very similar in style. And this upcoming movie, Two Orphan Vampires, which is the same deal from Powerhouse Indicator on Blu-ray or 4K, also great production value of the physical media. But this is from the very end of his career in 1997. It's, I think, not his last movie, but his last vampire movie, I believe. And it's very different all of a sudden, I think. But what do you guys want to run through just the basics of Two Orphan Vampires? Eric, you want to do it since?
All right, I'll do it. Well, basically, there's these two girls. The thing is, they're blind by day. They don't have to sleep in coffins, but they can't see. And then at night, they see in like day for night blue, and they come alive, and they kind of like live in this fantasy world where they represent like two girls from every fairy tale and like circus book, and they're Aztec gods, and like they've lived 1,000 lives, and they're looking through like books of the Incas saying, I was this person, I was this god. Like one of them's Quetzalcoatl. The other is, what's her name, goddess of the hyenas or something. And just there's, they just fantasize about blood and they drink blood. But they're also, it's sort of like, I think for Roland, it's that subconscious Jungian thing really sort of hits its zenith here when he realizes that, the feminine unconscious within him is just like very mutable. It becomes everything all at once. And this unfixed identity is just so hard to capture, but I think he really does. There's points where they look out at the camera directly and start talking about who they are. And you're just like, oh my God, he's pulling out all the stops. There's no barrier between you and the movie anymore.
Okay, Terry, thoughts?
It's probably my favorite of the later Roland films. The girls are great in this. They're really strong and super watchable. They really have a good chemistry, and it's fun. I think it's actually a really fun, quirky of his later stuff. I definitely like it, and it sort of made me laugh a few times. I found it kind of funny. I don't know if he intended it to have
I think
as
so.
much humor in it as I found in it, but I thought it was very tongue in cheek.
Definitely.
I don't know if I'm off my wig here or what, but
no, I think you're right.
I found it very cheeky. Like, the girls are funny, they say crazy things, and I mean, yeah, there is still that dreamlike aspect that there is in all Jean Roland films, and again, still great visuals, and there's just something about those later films that don't quite catch the magic for me like the 70s ones do. There's something missing. These girls are great, they really are, but there is something not quite sync for me with these later ones. And I can include, even though I do like this the best of the newer ones, there's something sort of missing for me.
Is it production values? Because this doesn't have the, it doesn't have the great cinematography of the previous ones.
Oh, I would disagree. I mean, it's
Disagree.
different, but there's points where it's just beautiful lighting, like inside the convent hallway, just very Edward Hopper-esque, you know what I mean? Just like the beautiful, like orange background light and the blue foreground.
Yeah, I don't think it's the aesthetics. I think it's really just the way it rolls out. It's a little more fast paced. I mean, it's still, it doesn't have that feel for me. It's not one I think I would purchase.
It's the opposite of Shiver, because Shiver almost has no dialogue, and this is like almost all dialogue. Like there's more dialogue here, and I think people who don't like this movie saw like the English dub version, because that does float around. And I started watching it, and I was like, oh my God, no wonder people didn't like it if they saw this, because you got to have their original voices and talking, and it's just meant for subtitles. Also, if you love like French classic film, or like check new wave like Daisies, or Julie and Celine Go Boating, or even the raunchier, stranger stuff like Don't Deliver Us from Evil. There's a long history in French films of like the two girls on wild adventures, kind of making things up. And I think this taps into that too. And it's almost like Roland finds a home. He situates himself within French cinema almost by this, because he gets away from the nudity, producer pleasing sort of adult stuff, and starts looking at these girls as children, rather than sex objects, which is endearing.
Yeah. And
well, maybe that's my problem with it.
It's not, there's
what can I say? I kind of like the sex, that's all part of the deal for me, I think, is what part of the appeal.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I did, since we have about, let's see, 7 minutes left, I did want to, besides just talk about these two movies, I did want to talk about Jean Rollin in general and what your sort of your recommended films are for him. Because for me, I'm going to say I like him, but I cannot pick a movie of his that sort of is really representative, because his first one, Rape of the Vampire, is very different than any of the others. It's in black and white.
Right.
It's surrealist, it's experimental. Then he kind of gets, his groove going with the vampire films and the other horror films. And yet none of them really stick out over the others for me. And maybe that's just me, but I can't pick a favorite because they all seem about the same. They all have a couple great moments. They all have the same kind of aesthetic. So I wanted to pick a Roland to be on our list of 366 movies, but I couldn't decide, and ultimately didn't. What would you guys recommend as the movie that's most representative and weird enough for us, and maybe the best?
I think personally, I would probably say Fascination as being a film that actually isn't a vampire film, but beautifully captures what makes those vampire films so sexy and cool and exciting and aesthetic. It's so aesthetic, Fascination. And Bridget Leahy, goddess, shares the same birthday as me.
Yeah, exactly.
And she's just, I really think it's weird. It is weird. It's definitely weird. And it's got all the great things that make Roland special in it. And it's not a vampire film, which I know is inevitably what he's come to be known for, but I do think it's well within that same vibe for sure of all those older
He
films.
drinks blood in it, just animal blood.
Yeah.
For some reason. It's almost like he's afraid to have them be vampires. So he has, oh no, they just drink blood, but they're normal. It's like, okay, I don't know what you're trying to prove. That's fun. I mean, I love that movie. I love Requiem for a Vampire, Shiver of the Vampires, like that whole, span. I think he was just on fire in a weird kind of slow burn way. But I think Shiver of the Vampire should go on the list just because it's got that rock and roll edge. It's got a canthus, you know what I mean? The others, they have okay soundtracks. Like I love the soundtrack for Two Orphan Vampires because it has like the kind of like 80s synth vocoder, kind of like sort of like what's his name, like for the Lucio Fulci films, what are like City of the Living Dead, who's the guy who did the soundtrack for that.
There's a bunch of Italian composers in that genre, where I can't tell them apart sometimes. I like just about all of the Italian composers who were all influenced by Morricone.
So Fabio Frizzi, that's his name. Sorry,
but the soundtrack is what puts Shiver over the edge for you.
And Two Orphans, I mean, it's great because like if the soundtrack was all bouncy and like Les Baxter, like trying to make it playful and fun like they are, it would have ruined it. I can't stand whimsy. You know what I mean? And the French often lapse into his whimsy, like playful. It's just like, ugh. But the soundtrack keeps it ominous, even though they're playful. The soundtrack is like, oh, they're gonna kill somebody, which makes it work. For me, I love that. That's why.
Well, you know what? I think Eric, I'm gonna have to agree with you. Maybe Shiver is the one for the list. Fascination is my other personal favorite. Those two are right up there for me. And a weird, totally off the beaten path, huge horror fan. So Living Dead Girl, I think for your horror fan, that's for sure. Like, and anyone who's just straight up horror fan, I'm like, yeah, that's the one you gotta see. It's
Grapes of Death is pretty good for that too, because it's got what's her name? I forget. You just said her name in Fascination.
Bridget Lee.
Yeah, she's in that. Amazing with like her dogs and stuff. I think she's got dogs in that.
Yeah, she does. Big Dobermans or yeah.
It's like iconic.
I feel like if I asked, he's got a big body of work. I feel like if I asked 5 different people, I'd get 5 different favorites and 5 different votes. Like I say, his to me, it's really hard to pick between, I ran out of time trying to pick one. It's hard to pick between all of his movies because he is very, it's almost like a seamless, interconnected body of work. You know, there is some development along the way, but he keeps his autorial voice very.
Yeah, there's always that beach. He loves that.
Always the beach, yeah.
Always ends up at the beach.
Back at the Beach was the title of a chapter on Jean Rollin.
That's perfect. I mean, it's a perfect sort of image for all of his work because, you know, it's like the eternal, like Tristan Corbière or whatever his name is. Like if you watch Orphan of the Storm, that documentary on that Arrow put out, it talks about that, like his love of like decadent French poetry, how his childhood sort of uncle was why can't I remember anybody's names all of a sudden?
Oh, I can't remember names anymore.
That super decadent sort of writer. Not
Rimbaud or Baudelaire or...
No, well, I don't know. It'll come to
Well,
me.
it'll come to you. Anyway, we got less than a minute, but we did, you know, I would definitely recommend if anybody has not checked out a Jean Rollin film, you need to check out at least one, and people we seem to have a minor consensus here for Shiver of the Vampires is the one to check out, which is good because it's just out.
Yeah, it's the gateway. It's the gateway drug.
Yeah. Gateway drug, yeah, perfect.
And then see the rest of them. And
Yep.
so we are about to run out of time, but I want to thank Terry McSorley and Eric Kirsten for coming on to talk about Jean Rollin, a great weird director. And we'll be back next week with Giles Edwards and director Nick Gatsby, who has a little psychedelic film coming up. So talk to y'all then, and bye-bye. Signing off.